In a time of political change and deep division, Americans are consumed with issues at home. But today I am asking a different question. How does the world see America today? Or what is it like when you're an American citizen traveling abroad at this point? And joining me today is somebody who is not here at the moment, but she's a wonderful American woman, Bethany Mandel. She's a homeschooling mother of 6. She's a brilliant writer, great on X, and she is the host of the Mom Wars podcast. And welcome to Perino on Politics, Bethany. This is where I call up my smart friends and say, what in the world is going on? And today we start overseas, where we find you today in Jerusalem. I recently just got back from a trip to Sierra Leone to visit the Mercy ships, and then I had a couple of days in Istanbul, 2 very different experiences and meaningful ones. Tell us what you're doing overseas and what your observations have been so far.
Yeah, so I spent the week of Thanksgiving actually in Athens, and that was incredible. And I've never been to Athens, so that was an amazing experience. And now I'm spending all of December in Israel. It's basically a homeschool on steroids trip. I think it's called like road schooling or world schooling. But it's one of the things that I really deeply wanted to do when we decided to homeschool, and this is our first enormous trip like this. I've done trips for a week with some of my children to Paris. Another trip I did some of my children to London, but this is our first really substantial whole family trip. And we're gone for almost 6 weeks.
I saw one of your X posts where you said somebody questioned like, but what about school? And you said, doesn't this look like school to you? Like field trips were where you learn the most. It's the thing that you kind of remember the most are the field trips.
Yeah, no, it's been incredible. So yesterday we went to the City of David, which is an incredible archaeological site. And today we went to the Temple Mount Sifting Project. And both of them are basically archaeological discovery points for learning about the Jewish connection to this land, especially from the first and the second temple period in ancient Jerusalem. And so my kids have had these incredible literal hands-on experiences. The Temple Mount Sifting experience, so in the late 90s, early 2000s, there was an illegal dig done on the Temple Mount by the Muslims that live in Jerusalem. And they just dug out enormous areas of the Temple Mount illegally under cover of night. And they took out 10,000 tons of dirt. And so they dumped it in a valley. And there were Jewish archaeologists who said, this is horrible, first of all, because they've destroyed the archaeological record. But this is the first time we've ever had an opportunity to literally put our hands in the dirt there, because you're not allowed to do archaeological digs there. And so they have volunteers like us, tourists, who sift bucket by bucket by bucket, looking for pottery, glass, and anything. My daughter found a shell today. And so so the shell was brought to Jerusalem, and the insides were used as a dye in the first temple period. And she found this shell in this bucket that hasn't been touched in thousands of years.
Wow,
so it's an incredible, it's an incredible learning opportunity.
When I was in Istanbul, we did tour a couple of the not archaeological sites. One is a site. There's the Topkapi Palace, but we went to a couple of the mosques. And one of the things that was fascinating was just realizing how sophisticated the mathematics were in the 5th century. And so you can,
we had that experience
on a trip
also.
like that, you can learn about physics and math as well.
Yeah, we had that experience in where was it? The Acropolis. They talked so much about the math, and my oldest daughter was like, I'm sorry, I'm on vacation and I don't talk about math on vacation. But joke's on her, because she's literally doing her math class online right now. So sorry.
Well, the other thing is that I thought was interesting is we took in Freetown, we took a walk with the new director of the Mercy ships. His name is Matt Murray. He was a police chief in Yakima, Washington. And, like if you think about going for a walk in Freetown at 6 a.m., like I would never go on my own. But when you're going with the former police chief, I'm like, okay, I'll go with you. He goes every morning. And it was amazing to watch him walk these streets. It's still dark at that time. And it was like, hey, boss, how's it going? Like he knows all the people who are basically, it's a terribly impoverished situation, Bethany. Terrible. And as I was walking, I was thinking about some of these, it was like some of my friends who think, well, I want my children to understand how fortunate we are to live in America and to live under the system. And as we were walking, I said I wanted to document it as socialism scared straight. So I'm going to work on that. If anyone's listening, they want to help me on socialism scared straight. I'm like making the point that you got to see it with your own eyes to understand the consequences of these things going on. So you learn a little bit about sociology as well. But the other thing I found, Bethany, is that I was gone for a week. I was with a lot of Americans and Europeans who are volunteers on the Mercy ships. No one's talking about politics. I mean, no one. I even did a Dana Perino Ask Me Anything on the ship. No one asked me about politics.
That's so interesting.
I was so interesting because, I mean, it's our jobs. We're kind of consumed with it. We think everybody's talking about it. There's so much polarization. Not in my experience. What's yours been? It might be a little different maybe in Israel, given obviously what's been happening. Yeah,
I was about to say that. So in Athens, zero. No, absolutely no talk of politics. Here in Jerusalem, and this is really the only place we've been so far in Israel, we've only been here for a few days so far, but there are American flags everywhere. There was giant paintings of President Trump in artistic galleries. He's really, really revered here in a way that I found surprising. Obviously, like, we wouldn't have seen that with Obama. He was not beloved here. That's the understatement of the year. But it is wild to see how much they love President Trump here.
And that's an enduring feeling. I mean, especially because the hostages came home.
Yeah, and that's it. There was a really funny meme that went around Israeli social media that I saw sort of pass through my Instagram newsfeed of this woman who is clearly very liberal here in Israel. And she was like, I'm going to name my first child after you. And she's sort of like having this debate with him about, abortion. And you can tell she's really confused. She's like, okay, listen, if you stop the war, we'll make a deal. No abortion for no boys at war. And you can tell, like, this is a strange position for her to take, someone, who would never, ever like Trump under normal circumstances, really feels indebted to him in a way that they don't feel about Netanyahu. Netanyahu is not a beloved figure here, and that's, again, a severe understatement.
President Trump had suggested that the Israelis give Netanyahu a pardon. Netanyahu himself has officially asked for a pardon. Do you think that will happen?
I don't think so.
Oh, wow.
I think it's going to be difficult for him to hold on to his power long term. He messed up on October 7th. And when you're the leader and that happens on your watch, there are consequences. And the feeling that I get from a lot of Israelis is that he has not really properly, atone is the wrong word, but recognize that. He refused to meet with a lot of the hostage families. He refused to visit the areas that were destroyed. Yeah.
Because they were angry about what happened.
So there's a lot of anger, especially on the Israeli left, that was pre-existing, and it has seeped into the middle because of his conduct.
What else in Jerusalem do you hope your children learn while you're there?
I mean, I think there's so much. I mean, the theme that has sort of been coming up again and again over the course of the last few days we've been here is there is a real attempt by not just, the sort of the left across the world, whether it be the UN or UNESCO, whatever it is, to deny the Jewish connection to this land. And it's undeniable. They're finding coins that have Hebrew on it from thousands of years ago. And so that's really what I want them to take from this experience, is that this is an undeniable connection, because the Jews are called, colonizers and settlers and everything. And it could not be farther from the truth. And so that's what I'm really hoping they take from it. And they've already taken a great deal of that from the last couple days.
There was a report today, and I think it was written up in the New York Times, but there's a new study that's been done about preteens and the use of phones and the effect of phones on them and their health. Not just about safety, but also like about their well-being. And obviously that's a mother and a father's biggest concern. How do you approach phones and technology with your kids?
So it's an evolving answer. My answer now is different than it was probably 8 months ago. Okay. So my oldest children are 12, 10, and 8. They all have their own computers that they can't really access much. My oldest daughter can access email and FaceTime. Then the next two boys, the 10-year-old and 8-year-old, they also are able to chat with their friends on Facebook Messenger Kids, and I'm able to supervise what they're writing back and forth. And that's basically the extent of it. They're all asking for phones. My 4-year-old asked me for a phone today.
4-year-old?
My 4-year-old, because he wants to watch things on his own phone.
Yeah, I see.
Because I won't say yes under normal circumstances, so he wants the ability to just watch whatever he wants. But the answer on the phone is basically no indefinitely. Probably in the next year or two, we'll get my oldest daughter a flip phone when she starts babysitting. But my perspective is if you want a smartphone, you can work for it and buy it. And that is a limiting ability.
Yeah.
Once they've earned enough money for an iPhone, okay, I guess that's when you can have it.
Bethany, over the week, I did try to keep in touch with things that were happening here on the ground. There's a special election in Tennessee tomorrow. We're in a district in Tennessee where President Trump won by 22 points. It actually is a close election, as sometimes these special elections tend to be, where people are concentrated on the efforts. There's kind of a Mamdani figure running on the left, and then a West Point grad running as a Republican. President Trump weighing in today. The margins in the House are so narrow that Mike Johnson is in the district today trying to make sure that people are going to turn out. The weather doesn't look terrific for tomorrow. Republicans typically show up on the day of voting. And I'm just thinking about the number of retirements that we saw last week. Now, so far, Democrats have 9 announced retirements in the House. Republicans have 5 announced retirements. But a report last week by Punchbowl News was from an anonymous source, but reliably sourced through other people as well and repeated, is that there could be many more retirements to come. Congress is not a great place to get a lot done right now. I love the feeling of professional satisfaction. It's one of my favorite emotions, and I can imagine that they feel a little demoralized. What are you taking away from this situation of these members retiring? Some are deciding to run for higher office, and we'll see if that actually happens for them as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think from the statements that we've heard from people that are retiring, that demoralization is something that comes up again and again and again. Marjorie Taylor Greene, she mentioned fear for her physical safety. I mean, I think that's legitimate. I'm not one to say I like Marjorie Taylor Greene under any circumstances, but I think there is legitimate fear post Charlie Kirk that this is a situation when you are as high profile as someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene that you've become a target. And so, I mean, and also we've seen members of Congress shot multiple times, from Gabby Giffords all the way through to the baseball shootings. So
I think on that, if I'll just jump in real quick, one of the things is that they don't actually have security. So like the president has Secret Service security. When you're in Washington, there's Capitol Hill security. But when you go back to your districts and you're doing town halls, that either has to come out of your finances from like your district budget, or some people use campaign donations in order to pay for that. And there's questions about that going forward. But I mean, it's hard to imagine, but maybe it's necessary. I don't know the answer to this. Like, should taxpayers foot the bill for more of this security? I don't know the answer.
I don't know. I mean, Charlie Kirk had the most security imaginable, and he still got shot. So I don't know how much security can earn you. But I've run into members of Congress in the street in Washington. They've been alone. I've run into John Fetterman. I've run into Dan Crenshaw alone, not with any members of their staff. So I think there is a legitimate fear for their physical safety. And when they look at it and they think to themselves, what am I doing? What is the point of this? What am I accomplishing? And the answer is not much. When you weigh that against your physical safety being threatened, I can see making that decision to pull the brakes.
I also think that for a lot of these members, like you went to go and get things done. And what's happened over let's say I started on Capitol Hill in 1995. What's happened is that Congress has basically let a lot of its power be stripped away. And they've deferred to the executive branch so much that it's almost like, why do we have a Congress? Now, we have a Congress because our founders were really, really brilliant. And they set up 3 equal branches of government, as I'm sure your children have learned all about. And we're about to enter the America 250 celebration, and part of that celebration is our system, which is one where Congress should have a say. And for example, when it comes to boat strikes on Venezuela fishermen, so-called fishermen, I'm doing quotes for those who can't see me, who are suspected drug dealers, now that those drug dealers are called terrorists. But now Congress wants to have a look. I'm okay with that. If Congress wants to investigate as a co-equal branch government with oversight over the executive branch in terms of actions for monies that they've appropriated, I'm okay with that. But it does feel like people have forgotten the whole point of Congress, and therefore there's a lot of dissatisfaction for people who are serving there.
Yeah, and also the gridlock that happens. It's very difficult to pass anything in a bipartisan way right now because they can't even agree to keep the government open. So what are they going to do to enact anything meaningful? They're not really doing that many meaningful things. And the things that they are, agreeing to in a bipartisan way, one of them, there's an organization called Operation Benjamin that I've helped out from time to time. And they just, through the Senate, and they're waiting for House approval, to get funding to identify Jewish soldiers who are buried in military cemeteries so that they can switch their graves to a Star of David from a cross, because a lot of them have been accidentally buried under a cross. So worthwhile use of congressional dollars. And it passed the Senate, and it's going to go to the House. And that bill, you can't get more vanilla and feel good than that, honoring Jewish war veterans, especially in this time of rising anti-Semitism. But those bills don't get a lot of attention. No. And the things that get attention are the things that are wild, like Marjorie Taylor Greene. And so when I hear about her retirement because she feels frustrated because it's, the system has become a circus, she's a circus master, and she's just basically saying, I hate the system that I've created. But unfortunately, this is the climate that we live in now.
Yeah. My last question on this point is that the White House is trying to be focused, if not fully, but more focused on the question of affordability. And the president is saying that he's the affordability president. When you guys do the Mom Wars podcast, what do you hear about the very real concerns that moms have about the economy? Yeah,
I mean, the gas prices have gotten better. All of those sort of metrics. Food has gotten somewhat better. Thanksgiving was, I think, slightly cheaper this year than it was last year. Yeah, but it's slightly. And the problem is, especially when you come at it from a mom perspective, it feels like you have to have a dual income house. And that comes with a lot of personal costs to everyone involved, mother, father. If there are mother and father, that's another, issue that comes up economically when you don't have a dual income house. And the cost of childcare, all of those things. And it's frustrating to me as a parent because there's so many ways that our tax system could be restructured to make it more fair. And that fairness is my opinion. But there's things like, there's a very low cap on the deduction for childcare expenses. Why can't that be raised indefinitely? Everything that you spend on childcare should be able to be deducted, in my opinion. They should raise the child tax credit every single year and peg it to inflation. They don't do that. It's $2,000 a kid. And so
it has
there's
been
a lot
for years.
Yes, a really long time. It raised slightly under Trump, and then those tax credits expired and they're back down to 2000. But there's paging Congress, I know they all listen to you, there's a lot of ways that we can restructure our tax system to make it easier to be a parent in this country. And it feels like a lot of folks on the Hill and in the White House are not doing that. And I know that there's a lot of parents that work in both areas because they've made it so friendly to be a parent on the Hill and in the White House. Get to it, guys. Right.
It's probably the most important work that they could do. And they're going to have another chance to do that in December. December's a busy month for Congress. We get back in January, there could be another government shutdown, but we will save that for another time. Bethany Mandel is my guest. She's a good friend of mine. I can't believe your daughter's 12. That makes me feel like, wow, that went fast.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah, she's a beautiful girl and is such a smart, big-hearted girl. This is the segment where I ask, what am I missing? What do you pay attention to? we are good friends, but we have very different lives. I don't have children. You have 6. You are homeschooling them. I have a dog. I have this situation where I live in New York, but I grew up on a ranch, and you have very interesting upbringing too. So you look at these things maybe in a different way. And so I'm wondering, what are you paying attention to that I might be missing?
So I think there's the issues related, the things that animate me most is what I view as sort of the assault on traditional life in our culture right now. And so I'm a big fan of the late Andrew Breitbart, who died probably 10 years ago now, I think.
Maybe a little more.
And
yeah.
Maybe more. Yeah, I think it was before I had kids. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And he famously said politics is downstream of culture. And I believe that wholeheartedly. Mm-hmm. And I especially, after Thanksgiving and into Christmas, there's always this like deluge of negative attention towards family. And so there's talk about, disconnecting from family and how to talk to your stupid
gosh. In the New York Times, the New York Times, there were so many headlines this week of like, why it's okay to not go to Thanksgiving with your family. Like, here's the ways to get out of talking to your family. I'm like, it's just not my experience that families are like that, but it must be enough that they're hearing from their readers that they want this kind of content.
I think that they are actually, I don't think that's true. I think that they think that that's what people should be doing, that the answer is to disconnect from your family. They want to create this chasm in American society between right and left, between the left and the wrong. And they are promoting things like estrangement and detachment and all of these really negative stories about family instead of anything positive. And I think a lot of that is because it gets more clicks and it gets more attention, and that's the cycle that we're in right now. But I do think, especially in this Thanksgiving and Christmas season, I want people to pay attention to this narrative that is very calculated and very on purpose. And it's to create these divisions in our society on a interpersonal level. And I find it exhausting. And the other thing that really frustrates me in the same vein is the negative talk about parenting and motherhood. So many women saying, oh, I hate this. I don't want to do Elf on the Shelf. I feel suffocated by Christmas with my family. And it's because they want to send a message to young women and young men that parenthood and motherhood and family is oppressive, and it's not something that you should aspire to. And that messaging seeps not just into liberals, but also into conservatives. There's so many young conservatives who feel like, oh, I want to live my life and I want to do all of these things, and then maybe I'll have kids. They don't want to sign on to something that sounds terrible, and they're making it sound terrible on purpose.
I'm going to pay attention to it. Where can people find the Mom Wars podcast?
So anywhere you find your podcast. We also have a Substack where I write pretty regularly on mom-related topics when I'm not, traveling with my 6 children, and I which is, for the next month.
Well, they give you plenty of material.
They really do. And I also write frequently for the Washington Examiner.
Yeah. Bethany Mandel, thank you so much, and our best to you as you travel, and enjoy every moment. Don't think about what happens when you come back, but when you come back, we'd love to have you on Perino on Politics again. Thank you so much.